Hi guys, it's Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers out there. We are headed to my mom's. We were dead set on swimming today at Casey's pool they have ready, and it's supposed to rain all day long here in North Carolina. So we are headed to my mom's, who graciously said, why don't we just have it here with the indoor pool that she has, so that way we can still swim. So it's Buddy, me, Mason's in the back, and you see Ellie. We have to give her up today. We've been watching Ellie for Kaylee and Will for them to go on a vacation, and so we've had her for, I don't know, 9 days, and so now we have to give her up. So it'll be a little bit of a transition for us to get used to life without Ellie again. So anyway, we are headed to my mom's. I'm meeting the family there, and we're going to, I think, get Chinese, have a little buffet there later, but we're going to swim first. And I thought it would be a neat idea for to interview my mother, who is 92, and just interview her about her earlier life and what I used to call when I was little as the olden days. So let's do that later. I'll be back with you when we get there with everybody. Bye. Ellie, goodbye, Ellie. Oh. Here we are at the Bradbury room, enjoying our time here before we go to the pool. We have just a little bit of snacks here, and the men are the ones who are having to find out what we're eating. I think they're probably going to get Chinese. There's Casey, doing a little bit, Kippy, Buddy, Matt, Brian. We have over here. Oh, Mason's getting his game. We're going to be playing Fortnite over here. We got Steely, Will, and Kaylee and Nana. Hey, Mackie! So we're going to have our interview with Nana now, and this was an old book that I found that was my dad's, Bill R. Belk. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
And it had his company that he worked for. He used to have these tablets at home all the time from the cement company that he managed. You remember those?
I remember those. I still have some.
Yeah.
They have not been used.
Yeah. Well, this is Mother's Day, and we've all been together at my mom's place, and this is a Bradbury room that we've been, it's not her room, it's just a room that they have that you can use, rent, not rent, but just use while you're here. So we are going to ask Nana a few questions. She is 92, born in 1933, and so what is your first memory when you go back in life of how life was when you were little?
Well, I remember that it was completely different from now. You didn't ever lock your doors, and you could leave your kids at home and you didn't worry about somebody stealing them. The telephone, nobody had one mostly. If you did, it was on the wall, and you had a receiver that you put to your ear and you talked on the to the wall. And operator would say, "Number, please." And you would give her a number and she'd ring it up. And so that was the telephones back in those days.
So it was like was that before party lines where you shared a line with several people?
No, well, I don't remember whether that was a party line or not, because that particular phone was in my dad's restaurant. And we didn't have one at home.
Right.
But he called people from there. But it was a real different time. I know that my daddy had I'm not sure if it was a Model T or a Model A car with a rumble seat. 2 seats in the front and then a rumble seat that you pulled out the back, kind of like the luggage place, the trunk of a car. And there were 2 seats in there, and that's where my brother and I rode, was in the back of the rumble seat.
And so, did most people have cars back then?
Well, there were cars and people had them. You know, that was kind of during the war or right after the war, and people couldn't buy cars because they were rationed. I mean, you just were lucky.
So not everybody had a car.
Not everybody had a car. My grandparents didn't have a car. They had mules that they rode, and wagons and things like that. But they were farmers. So I don't know what city life was like, because in Aberdeen, where we lived, it was a little town. But where they lived was out in the country, because they were farmers and they didn't have a car.
And you didn't have a TV either, did you?
No, oh Lord, no. We all huddled around the radio.
No TVs until, do you remember how old you were?
I'm thinking I was pretty old. I was almost a teenager whenever we got our first television set, and we were one of the first ones in Monroe to get one.
So everybody came to your house?
Well, there was one other friend of my mother's that they were in business for themselves, and they had a TV, and they would have seats set up in front of the TV, almost like a theater. They'd line them up, and people would come. They would invite people to come, and they would sit in front of the TV and look at some shit Lawrence Welk was on. That kind
in
of,
black and white.
In black and white. That's right.
Well, when you went to school in your town, how did you get there? They didn't have buses then, did they?
They didn't have buses that I know of, but somebody that worked for my daddy would take us to school in their car. And it was a Model T or a Model A. I don't know the difference between them.
But a lot of people just walked to school then, right?
What now?
A lot of people just walked to
yes,
school.
because it was a small town and the school was kind of in the center, and a lot of people did walk to school.
And so, like, how many people were in your graduating class?
Probably 30.
30?
In my graduating class.
Because, you know, if you look back and roll forward to my age, it's like 1,500 was in.
Yeah.
Now, that wasn't the graduating class. That was the whole school. So 500-ish in the graduating class. So only 30.
Only 30. But then again, all of our boys were in the National Guard, and the National Guard was called up during the, what war was it?
World War II. No, it was World War II.
At the ending of World War II.
And then the Korean War, you lived through.
Well, that's when Bill went in
Yeah.
the Korean War. But our class, the last 2 years of our high school, they were not there.
So the boys... So you had no boys in your class the last 2 years?
I don't remember if there were some or not, but it depended on whether or not they were in the National Guard. You know, they all joined the National Guard because they got to go on a little vacation 2 weeks or so out of the year, and they got a little money. And so they all joined up, and they all had to go
into the war. Well, in your school, did they have meals? Did they serve breakfast? Did they serve lunch at your school?
Well, we had 2 schools, an elementary and then another one that started in the 9th grade, I guess. And so, what was that question? I got way late over here.
Sorry, the littles are showing me my Mother's Day present, which is what? It's a float. It's a layout float. How cool.
It's a pool float.
Thank you. All right. Anyway. Okay, so we had that little interruption from a littles. And so we were talking about the boys who got called up and they weren't there for the last couple of years of your high school, which that's had to be weird to be in a town where there's hardly any young boys, isn't it?
High school.
Right.
So all the boys, you can't really date because all the boys are gone.
For our prom, they had to go down to the sophomores to get boys to escort us to our prom.
Oh, they were like that, I'm sure.
Probably didn't. They
Well,
were drafted.
So you did. I was asking you earlier. Did your school have meals there?
Oh yeah, that was the question. We had, like I said, 2 schools, elementary and then one high school, and the meals were across the street from each other, and the meals were held at the elementary school, and we went over there for our dinner. But we were so close to town that we were high school kids, so we mostly went to town to a cafe or restaurant or where my daddy's cafe was.
Well, so you didn't have to eat there.
No, you didn't have to eat there.
So
But
you
the-
just went to your dad's restaurant and ate and came back?
It was close. It was close, and I did, or sometimes I just eat with others because they couldn't come to my daddy's cafe because my daddy sold beer, and at that time it was almost a no-no, so they couldn't come in there. But I'd go there, or I'd go with them wherever they went to eat. That was okay with my parents.
Yeah. So, what did you do for fun?
Well, we just had, in my high school days, we just had a gang of 5, and I don't know what we did. We went to one house or another. Most of us, our parents worked, and there's nobody home, so we just went to one or the other because we were within walking distance of everybody. They may be on the other side of town, but that still wasn't far, you know, for teenagers to walk. So we did that. Plus, we had a teenage club that we could go and dance and just whatever, you know, at the teenage club.
So you danced and you went to movies, right?
Oh yeah, the movies raised me when I was real little. It didn't cost but 10 cents to go to the movies. So I spent a lot of my time in the movies when I wasn't with friends.
So what was the average age that people got married back in your early days?
I guess they got married shortly after they graduated from high school. A few went to college, but especially women. A few went to college, but they were probably 18, 19 when they got married.
All right.
I was 19, almost 20 when I got married. We got married in February, and I would have been 20 in April.
So, most of your clothes, did you buy them or were they made?
Most of my clothes were bought, but for special occasions, sometimes my mother would, when I was real young, would make my outfit. It was a program at school, and I had this one dress that I had to say a poem when I was in elementary school. I was scared out of my wits to have to do that. They had to push me onto the stage because I was so bashful. But the dress that she made me was red satin underneath, and it was black velvet on the outside, and it had a satin blouse that you wore with it, with little straps across here. And I really thought that was the cat's meow. But when I got out there and I saw that crowd, I looked at them, and then finally I started my little poem, and it was, I dreamed I had a toy balloon that pulled me straight up to the moon. And when I got there, I sat so still upon a chocolate ice cream hill. And right beside me lay a spoon, and I began to eat the moon. The next night, when I looked up in the sky, just half the moon came sailing by.
You still remember it?
I remember that. I was scared out of my wits. I don't even know how I remembered it, but I did remember it. So that...
So you really did purchase most of your clothes from like boutiques, because they didn't really have malls.
Well, we had Belk's. That was the place. And then we had little shops.
You had Belk even when you were like 10, 11?
Yes, we had Belk. And Efforts and Pennies.
Okay. Okay. Well, you didn't have fast food, so you didn't have McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's.
No, but my dad sold hamburgers and hot dogs and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So most families cooked all their meals.
That's right.
So the woman cooked all the meals, and she was at home most of the time, right? Most women.
Well, not completely, but mostly, because my dad had a restaurant he called Dal's Lunch, and that was short order. And then he was co-owner in another restaurant that was a cafe, and that was home cooking. They did home cooking in there, and that's mostly where my mother worked, was in that one. And she was in the kitchen. She was a good cook, and she did a lot of the cooking. Of course, she had a lot of help too.
Do you remember a time before refrigeration? Well, maybe at your grandparents, where they actually did have an ice box furniture that you put ice in?
I do. We lived in the town, and we had ice refrigeration. But in my grandparents' house, they had an ice box, and the iceman came around, I don't know, a couple of times a week, and you would put a little notice out on your door of how many pounds that you wanted, and he would chisel it off. And while I was at my grandparents' house, and my other cousins were there too a lot of the time, and we would all come out and we would eat the little chips that fell off of the ice, and he would put it in the ice box, and it was insulated, and it lasted for a while.
So a couple of times a week, you said. So how long would those big ice blocks would stay for a few days before they would?
They would. And before that, I remember that my grandparents, there was a spring close to their house, and they put their milk and their butter and all that kind of stuff in the spring to keep it cool.
That's crazy. I've heard of that before too. Where maybe some houses were built on top of them, so they could just kind of go under the house to get.
Well, ours was close by, but it wasn't that close. I mean, this was my grandparents' house. We lived in a town, and it was similar to any town, little town, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, just to wrap it up, not be long, what is the best advice for this generation you might want to give, where if it's to do with marriage or friendships or health?
Well, my motto is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I feel like you can't go wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
It covers a lot of ground. But I have other words of wisdom that you never want to hear. So you just slough it off whenever I try to tell you some words like that. But anyway.
Well, you were married for how long?
47 years.
Before Dad died. Yeah. Marriage was not that hard, was it? Some people think it is hard.
Well, no, because I had a good husband, and I had good children, and we had a fellowship. We had a neighborhood group that we all got along. We went to church, and we had friends at the church, and our children had friends at the church, and it was a good time. It was a good time. And
so the same advice for friendships? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
And what about health? At 92, you're still up, moving, able-bodied, good mind.
Well, thank you. I was active. I mean, I worked part of my life, and my married life, but there was a time, I believe after you were born, I stayed home. I believe until I went to school, at the school system. And I had the same hours you did with school. And so, but even with that, during the summer, I liked gardening. And I had a garden that I liked to work in. And so I think that kept me active.
Well, thank you, Mom, for answering a few of these questions on this Mother's Day. We've had such a good time here, just chilling out, swimming, eating, and talking, and just having fun with the kids, too. So thank you. I love you.
I love you, too.